Hey, welcome into Philadelphia Walks PTSD. My name is Sharon Cole, or Sharon, or Cole, whatever you want to refer to me as. No big deal. In a good way, I don't care. However you refer to me. Today is day 62 on March 3rd of my one video each day, 365-day campaign to raise money for a life lost, a life tortured, PTSD trauma out the wazoo. Everything looks nice and neat and cute in this little video here, but I do have moments and I don't want to have to suffer in this way. But as I do on every video that I create for each day, I go back to the beginning or the source. If I could figure out the exact source, that would be key to actually having a case. It's incredibly difficult to develop a case when someone is so cowardly that they will enlist the help of invisible powers that be, and even people on the street who don't really know why they're doing what they're doing. Not totally. It all started the fourth Monday of January 2011. I was made to believe I'd be murdered in my apartment. There was a series of orchestrated events that unfolded that scared the SHIT or heebie-jeebies out of me that evening. I was trembling and convulsing so fiercely in fear, believing that someone was going to break through my door after possibly breaking into the basement. It was a whole bunch of things that went on that night. I called my sister first. She tried to help me and say, try to put a chair up under the doorknob, anything to make sure someone couldn't get in. I knew I was kind of trapped in that apartment because there were bars on the window. It was a first floor apartment in a row home that was converted to apartments. This is very common in the city to have bars on the windows. If you go past that old address now, 626 South 19th Street, apartment 1F, it's changed. They redid the entire, after I left, and this is true of a lot of people I work for, everything was redone. It's sort of like erasing history a little bit. We're switching up the terrain so it's not as recognizable or harder to prove unless you have someone like me to remind everyone every day. But if you go by there, there are no bars on the window. And in fact, they must have added a regular HVAC system because I used a window unit for air conditioning. That was part of the apartment where I lived. So now, and even if you were to look up the apartment, it looks like a luxury-ish apartment. When I was there, it was very, it was average at best. It was a very shoebox tiny apartment, one way in, one way out. That was through the door that leads to the hallway to go to the front door to get out of the row home. And that's exactly where I didn't want to go. But anyway, believed I'd be murdered that night, called my sister. Then she convinced me to call the police. They came out, waltzed around, kind of acted like, what's the big deal? Even though I was literally like trembling. I was afraid to even go out my door, to go out the front door of the row home to meet them. And I was trying to figure out, like, are they here? Are they not here? I was too afraid to even go out of my front door. So anyway, and if that weren't enough, then the games commenced. That was the kickoff, as I call it, or the hit, as I call it. I used to call it was like I was hit. I didn't know how to explain it. I just know that the PTSD was so bad and I was scared so much and so many messages went through my brain, and I do think messages can be sent, implying that even when I called the police, that it would be going somewhere else. It's like someone's movie. Someone else wanted to create a movie. It kind of feels like that. I don't know how you prove it. But when I called the police, of course, we have very specific accents here in Philadelphia. They're so beloved by only people in Philadelphia, I guess. I'm kidding, kind of. It is sort of embarrassing that we have a city that hasn't evolved its people or encouraged people to get rid of something that can really harm people's ears. But anyway, I'm trying to be nice. But when someone picked up the phone on the 911 dispatch or what have you, all I heard was like this. It's a very flat, fakeish sounding Italian voice. It's hard to explain. And immediately I thought someone was like having a sadistic moment of, orgasmic glee, that someone was scared. And I felt like my call was not routed really to the police. It was routed through some other, either the CIA or some sadistic movie maker's world. I actually felt that way because of how bad the dialect or sound is of many, many people here in a city who who are adamant about, are very prideful about where they come from, but at the expense of evolving, in my arrogant opinion. So, anyway, there, I said it. But it did scare me because I wasn't sure what was going on with the call to the police. But if that weren't enough, then the games commenced. And every time I reached out to people who I thought were new-ish friends in the years leading up to 2011, I had met a bunch of people. I was engaging in the LGBT community and other communities as well. So I don't want people to think that it has to do with the LGBT community. I don't think it does, but I do think the LGBT community might have been infiltrated by people who were playing a game, or there are a lot of people in certain groups that might participate in a certain type of game. So anyway, I had run a couple 5Ks and a half marathon or two by that point. I participated in the Dragon Boat race team, Team Philadelphia as a volunteer, Sapphire Fund as a volunteer. I met people through dog walking, a whole bunch of things that I participated in. And I actually felt some level of happiness and contentment because I felt like I found a new community and I was still sort of working my way into creating a life, if you will. It took me, I was a late bloomer in general. It took me a long time to figure out how to create a life while everybody else is going on marrying, having kids, and doing the normal, usual, traditional status quo kind of thing. I was still trying to figure out how to blossom, if you will. So anyway, many people who I met through the venues I just mentioned, I reached out to them, tried to say something totally whack happened. And instead of coming back with what the LGBT community would say they would come back with, they came back with, "Oh, well, I hope you feel better," or, "Oh, do you think it's your perception or reality of what happened?" So I did not feel supported at all by the people who I thought I was enjoying in life. I had gone to Christmas parties and all kinds of stuff. So these people turned out to be very unsupportive and, I guess, liars, because they're the opposite of what you would expect. In the LGBT community, there are many people who do pride themselves on being very supportive, validating one's experience, and so forth and so on. And some of these people have gone on to become therapists. That's even scarier. So anyway, but I want to bring up one specific example of something that happened to show that there are powers that be that might have even puppeted them. And I'm certain that many of these people don't even know. I don't know what to say. But anyway, one example would be I felt forced to do a lot of things after everything kicked off. And one of those things was, calling a lot of people who I kind of distanced myself from just because I felt stifled around them or what have you. I maintained a relationship with my dad, but I kind of distanced myself from my stepfamily. But at some point, I felt pressured to go ahead and visit with my dad and my stepmom, his second wife, while they were going to be in Delaware for one of the holidays. I forget the holiday. I'll just say Easter. I kind of don't remember what holiday it was. And I kind of didn't want to drive to Delaware, but it's like, well, this whole thing is forcing me sort of back into an old dynamic, a family-oriented dynamic, whether it's step family or regular family or what have you. And I don't know what else to do, but I felt forced. But I agreed, and I signed up for a zip car. Back then, zip cars were very prolific or prevalent here in the city. They've dwindled down because of the pandemic, but signed up for a zip car, and I signed up for, say, like a 5-hour time period or like a large block because I would have to drive down to Delaware and come back. And this was on a holiday. The morning of, say, Easter, I can't remember the exact holiday, I get a call from Zipcar. We're sorry, the car, that you had reserved was in an accident, it is inoperable, and we have no other Zipcars available for you to use today. We'll give you a credit on your account, or we'll give you a free trip next time, or whatever. And I was like, there's no car at all in this entire city. And we had a lot of Zipcars back then. So I was like, but there wasn't another car, probably because I signed it out for a certain block of time in order to be able to drive all the way down to, say, like Middletown, Delaware, and back and include a visit. So I would need the car for at least 4 or 5 hours to safely do this. So I was like, are you kidding? And I had dog walks all around this. So I kind of worked it out and told people that I would be away for 5 hours, but I could walk dogs before or after. So anyway, I called down to my stepbrother's house, and my stepmother, I think she answered, and I said, "Well, is Dad there? Because I just found out, Zipcar, there was an accident, and the car that I was supposed to use is inoperable, and there's no other cars available." She's like, "Oh, well, your dad and David and the kids, and they all went to some go-karting place, bumper car place." That's how bad it is. "And they're not here. They went out to do, some sort of race thing. So I'll let them know." But the whole time I'm feeling as if they would, because they would kind of wonder. They're the type of people who would be like, "Is she lying because she doesn't want to come down here?" So I don't lie. I have avoided people in the past, but I've never really lied. And that it made me feel badly, because I would actually worry about my dad or feel sorry for him. And meaning I told him I'd come down, so I planned on going down regardless of my feeling about other personalities that day. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, I guess I don't have to drive down there. Like, I don't have to drive down there, but I'm the one who suffered the most, other than maybe my dad. And then other people who might think, "Oh gosh, honey, do you think she didn't want to come down here and totally made it up?" And that would be the narrative that would unfold. That would be the typical thing. Because in that household, they always assumed people were lying to them. And it was frustrating because they seemed to always suspect or be suspicious of people, even when people weren't lying. And it's like, how do you convince people that you're not lying? So I had to sort of outgrow that whole dynamic. But Zipcar actually called, and I'm wondering if it's still on record somewhere. But what do you think of that? I see that as a game being played by the powers that be. I would later have coffee with someone who was a friend, and he's like, "Well, just look at it like a gift. It was a gift." Because technically, I don't always love being around all kinds of personalities that somehow made me feel. It's hard to explain. We all have grown up in families or step families or what have you, where we feel for some reason we don't know how to operate. So we want to sort of figure out how to feel comfortable, and it's better to not always go to every family function. So, but he said, see it as a gift. The thing is, I actually suffered because I worried that they would think that I wasn't telling the truth. And I worried about my dad being disappointed because I said I would be down there. You see what I mean? It didn't really pan out to feel like a gift. It's like I made the decision, I signed out a car, and miracle or wow, what are the odds? What are the odds? And I said, what are the odds? A million times. I'm so not kidding. What are the odds that I'm going to get a text message that says "run like hell" when my mom and I are down at my sister's and somebody else wanted to come over, and ding, it chimes right up? What are the odds that every time I walk in the door, 5 other people are going to walk in the door at the same time? What are the odds that I'm going to, so many things were timed, so many things feel orchestrated, and I know someone caused that. I know someone caused for that car to be in an accident. Somehow, I don't know why. I think at some point, like I tried figuring out, like, should I call certain people? Like, I knew one district attorney, Jude Conroy, from the district attorney's office. And for some reason, I thought of him because, I don't know, I met him once through someone because of volunteerism that I did a long time ago, someone named Dan Rosano. And this Jude used to be, I believe, he was a homicide. He was a prosecutor on the homicide team, or what have you. So he has handled homicide cases. I've looked him up in recent times, and I think he's in a different realm. I believe he handles guns and violence and gangs or something. But he used to be part of the homicide prosecuting team. I also met someone named Brian Lippo, and he was the son of the lead homicide detective here in Philadelphia of many years. His dad retired, I think, around 2015 or so. So homicide was constantly coming up as a thing. But anyway, for some reason, I thought of his name when the zip car thing came through. And this thing happened and took me off guard. And on one hand, I was able to relax that day and not drive down to Delaware. But on the other hand, I felt badly and guilty all day about disappointing possibly my dad. But according to my stepmother, Barbara, apparently he was out go-karting with the stepson. And my dad has two daughters biologically. The kids he spent a lot of time with happened to be his second wife's kids, her kids from a previous marriage. So anyway, it's an issue that this came up because it came up as scary. Like, is someone connected to powers that be to plan to make sure I couldn't come down? And is it a way to keep a division between a dad and his real daughters? Who comes into wedge? And it starts to get scary. So I don't like to go down the path because it's like people have certain personalities that could be perceived as sociopathic or, psychopathic. And it's like, could someone in that world down there pilot a situation to make sure that Sharon's left back here and she is and isn't happy? She's relieved to not have to drive so much, and the anxiety is gone from having to be around a lot of people. But on the other hand, I'm feeling badly, and I actually did worry about my dad's feelings. So, and the step family didn't realize that people actually worried about their dad's feelings. They very often assumed that people wanted to hurt him. It's like an actual thing, like reversed. It's when parent-children dynamics are reversed. The parents do for kids, and it becomes a thing of you're not doing this for your dad. You're not doing this for your dad. I didn't hear that so much because I was technically a good person. I just struggled a lot around certain personalities and felt a certain way. But anyway, all that came up. But point being, zip car, what up? What happened to that car? Did someone actually cause that car to be in an accident? And how real did it look? Or was there a whole gang or mob of people, a whole organization making sure that I didn't drive down there that day for good or for bad? Because it can be scary to think that so many people are in control of your life. So much so that they make sure you don't drive. I don't know if they're good people or bad people at the helm. So that's it. Okay, thank you so much and have a great day. And please donate if you can. I genuinely just sort of, skirt by and pray to God that I can keep going with a roof over my head. And finding normal work per se is incredibly difficult to do. I just keep sticking with what's kept me going for a long time these days, and that's dog walking. So I've had over 68 jobs. So, okay, thank you so much and have a great day. So zip car.